We'll call the meeting to order. This is a special city commission meeting. We'll note that Commissioner Jackson and Commissioner Steiner are absent. All other commissioners are present. Mr. Colling, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes, Mr. President.
Okay. Would there be a motion then to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. So the motion carries. The first item is the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda you wish to discuss?
I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'd second.
We have the motion and the second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Decker?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, so the motion carries. The second item are the accounts payable. Do you have any comments or questions regarding any of the accounts payable?
I have none.
No, I don't have any.
If not, would there be a motion to approve these accounts payable?
A motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
With the motion and the second, any discussion? Hearing none, then we'll vote. Mr. Decker?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, so the motion carries. Brings us to item 3, the 2014 year-end budget amendments and transfers. Mr. Colling, anything you'd like to say in way of introduction?
Mr. President and Commissioners, as you know, Brady Martz has been tasked, and we've brought them on staff in a limited role here to provide some of our year-end budget amendments in year-end accounting services. They do have two individuals here to present to you the budget amendments for 2014, and I'd have them come up to the podium and review the budget amendments for you.
Okay. Maybe we'll have you gentlemen introduce yourself, and then you can go ahead and make your presentation.
I'm Ryan Munson with Brady Martz Associates, and this is Andrew Sikora. We're out of the Bismarck Brady Martz office. We've been helping the city out here the last month with different projects. One of the projects being assistance with the budget amendments. Andrew, he's been working with it primarily, so I'll kind of have him guide us through it. And if you have questions, feel free to speak up, I guess.
All right, I'm going to begin with the expenditures that we need to amend for the year. The first of all, the general fund for engineering, we need to increase the amount budgeted for outsourcing fees that were paid to KLJ for the year to fill that role of the engineer position. And that amount is for $200,000. Next is the purchase of the snowplow and the street fund for $135,000 that was not originally budgeted for. I see it was approved earlier in an earlier session by the commission, but no formal amendment has been made. Next is the street salaries for full-time employees. That number has increased as staff numbers, looking through that with Denise down in the finance department. Staff has been relatively consistent through the year. I know there's been turnover, but she is not aware of any other items that would suggest that there's an error as far as being recorded. There are 2 positions that have been recorded in that fund or in that account that have not been recorded in the prior year, and that would be the public works director has all been allocated to the streets fund, and the administrative assistant has been allocated to that account as well, which has helped with the increase. And also looking at the prior year budget amount, it looks like it was slightly under budgeted in the prior year as well. In the current year, there's already been about $620,000 incurred in that fund. Last year for the total year, it was about $670,000, and this year is $700,000. I'm sorry. So with those numbers in mind, that's why we're proposing this amendment for that $150,000 to give us a little cushion for the remaining amount for the rest of December.
The on the street issue, you mentioned the public works director and the administrative assistant are being charged or charged to the street account. Were they for the 2014 budget? Were they budgeted in that account, or were they budgeted elsewhere?
They were split between the other proprietary, the water funds. So talking to Denise, it looks like we do need to do an adjustment for the portion that should be charged to the water and the sewer fund.
I think in 2013, it was 25% street, his salary, 25% water, and 50% refuse. So this year, it looks like all the salary went to the street fund, so that's part of that should get moved out of there to some of these other funds.
So will you be doing that as part of the year-end close?
Yes,
Yeah.
we will be.
So really, we're not $150,000 over budget here then, because I couldn't recall that we were operating with any more positions than what we had authorized coming into 2014.
Yeah, I think at the end of the year, there was 14, I saw full-time positions. Speaking with Denise, she said a lot of people came and left during the year, so I'm not sure if you compared 13 to 14, how many full-time equivalent employees there would be. But looking at like the general ledger detail, it looked like there are a lot more hourly salaries during 14 versus 13. I'm not sure, certain times of the year there are more employees or not, I guess, but.
Yeah, we may have more employees or employee hours in 14 than we did in 13, just because of the growth of the city. But I don't think the 14 budget was identical to the 2013 actual.
Yeah, I know, and looking at the 13 actual versus the 13 budget, at the halfway mark, there was about $300,000 in salaries, and only about $510,000 was budgeted for 2013. So, I mean, you were already past that halfway mark through the halfway mark in 2013. I don't think the budget for 14 reflected that halfway
Extra
mark,
need.
that extra need that
Yeah.
was probably incurred.
So you're saying you think we were under budgeted
Yeah.
in 2014, and at the same time, we weren't budgeted to take a full charge of the Public Works Director and Administrative Assistant, which you're going to adjust anyway.
Right, I think, yeah, like Andrew was saying, for 2013, the budget was 510, and I think you had 620,000 of expense. And for 14, I think the budget was 590, and there's like 700 full-time. That's just counting the
So
full-time.
you're saying we budgeted in 2014 less for streets than we actually experienced in 2013?
Right.
Yes.
Well, I find that kind of odd, because as part of our budgeting process, we have, at the time we do the budget, we have at least 6 months' worth of data from the prior year that we're looking at too.
And looking at the 2013 budget book, the actual amount of salaries for full-time was right around 295,000. And the budget amount for 14 was bumped up to I believe it was only up to 519. So I don't know what the disconnect was, as far as, because I would have assumed, it only went up 9,000 from 2013 being the budget, and then to 2014 it was only 519,000. So I'm not sure what that discrepancy is.
Okay.
And it should have been closer to 590, right?
Yeah, or
Off existing data.
off of existing, yeah, right around
Yeah.
590 using the existing. So, but moving those two positions out, doing that adjustment, that's right around $80,000. So that'll come out, but we'll still need that extra cushion, like I said, for the month of December, and the salaries are already incurred. The next line down is for additional overtime for street employees. Looking at that general ledger detail, there's two individuals that each had about $18,000 worth of overtime pay. And then the other makeup was the other 12 employees just having overtime for the remaining 14,000 that we need to amend the budget for. These individuals, like I said, are Mr. Kilwain and Mr. Schwab. They had, with Denise looked at the payroll, and those two were the largest of the two for the overtime. And it sounds kind of contradictory with the salary increasing, but it sounds like with the limited number of staff, they've had to do more overtime in order to help with the growth, talking with Denise. So That's that amount. The next line down is for the finance. It's for our fees for incurred in December. All we did was pull what we had invested in our work in progress, and that was the amount that was not budgeted for. And that was to increase the outsource fee budget for $28,000. The next line down is for the museum. There was building repairs for water problems that we were notified by the museum director for $11,531. Those expenses have already been incurred, so the budget did not have those included. Those kind of, as far as I know, they were unforeseen. So we need to increase that by $11,531. The next one down is for the engineering department. Looks like they've engaged V3 Studios for downtown development. And the little that Sean had explained to me was to better utilize the downtown space in Dickinson. And this company is for the development of the downtown area, and that expense was for $16,000. For the fire department, an additional $5,000 worth of expense for fire supplies for the truck, and another $500 for an ad for the sale of the fire truck were incurred. The $5,000 were to get the truck ready for sale. That amount will be offset below in the revenue. In order for the future fund, we had to increase the trustee fees for the fourth quarter. They were over budget. There was about $18,000 budgeted for the trustee fees for the future fund. However, due to the portfolio size, I'm assuming American Bank Center uses a percentage of the portfolio size to calculate the trustee fee. And just with the portfolio size, we're going to need another $6,500 in expense to cover the fourth quarter fees.
Excuse me, but I can't remember our past practices, but did you check our past practices? Was the future fund responsible for its own trustee fees?
Looking at the budget book for 2013 or 2014, it appears that they did have a line item for the trustee fees that have been,
That they
Put
were
in that
paid
account.
for by the general fund?
yeah. And as far as I know, that they do get that transfer from the general fund, which we'll discuss a little bit later down in the lot sales. They get a portion of the oil revenue, oil royalty revenue. They get 50% of whatever is brought in by the city, and then they also receive an extra, anything over 50,000 is brought in.
For the lot sales. yeah.
The lot
Yeah.
sales is brought in, so.
Well, the city in the past hasn't netted out the trustee fees against the transfer.
Okay, yeah.
I'm asking.
Yeah, you know, and that's something we could look into. As far as I know, it's a separate, the transfer is the set amount, and then the trustee fee is a separate line item as well,
Okay.
so. The next one is for wastewater backup. There was another claim incurred in the fourth quarter for $50,000 for backup. I believe there's looking at that GL detail with Denise, it appears, like I said, there was another one that wasn't expected that happened later in the year. As far as reasons for it, I'm assuming it's due to the growth and just different
Well-
issues with the sewer, so.
We have a policy that we limit claims to no more than $10,000, so I'm assuming this is
Multiple,
5 or more claims, and now,
not one single claim. No,
Right.
I believe it's multiple claims, yeah. Through the month of November and the beginning of December, it looks like there was several claims that were incurred.
Total 48,000, I believe,
Yeah.
claims.
now, you probably wouldn't know the answer to this, but perhaps Mr. Colling does. Are these charges related to the same rain event that we discussed at a recent prior city commission meeting?
Yes, that's my understanding. It all stems out of the sewer backup that happened along the Empire Road construction project. And we are pursuing that claim with the contractor and with KLJ.
Okay.
And so those multiple claims depleted the fund. I know that, you know, for years we don't touch it, and it just keeps accruing, but that kind of wiped it out.
There is still a balance, fairly substantial balance, I think, in the account, and these gentlemen may know better than I, but I believe it's about $50,000 that's still available in that fund.
You know, and that's something we'll have to look in. I don't believe we have that detail in front of us. Basically, what we did is a very high level It's comparing what was recorded in expense versus what was budgeted, so there might be the revenue to offset that. But we were just looking at the expense side of it to, for the claims that were incurred in the year.
As of October, we had $21,600
Okay.
in that account, so.
It'll take a while to build back up.
All right, and then for the grants fund, this is hand in hand with the revenue side of it. All we did here to amend the budget was to balance out the expenditures with the revenue, as there were multiple miscellaneous grants received through the police department and the oil impact grants that were received. The amount of that was about $403,757. And that'll be offset with the revenue to recognize the revenue from those grants to offset the expense, because that fund zeroes itself out at the end of the year. So that's what this amendment is for, is to get it up to zero out for the year. No net change in that fund, just kind of a reclassification of the total amount received versus expended. Next line down is for solid waste and overtime. Another $55,000 for that due to FTEs working more overtime hours. We did not get any detail on which employees were over and incurring that extra overtime. It looked reasonable to us as the full-time salary expense wasn't over budget like it was in the street fund, so we just looked at that one line item. Also for the solid waste fund, supplies will need to an increase in expenditure of $50,000 for the increase in volume of refuse, purchase of tires and gravel. And that was just incurred through, I believe, just the increase in the amount of services that the city's providing in regards to refuse. All right, for revenue, we're looking at an increase in budget of $420,000 for just additional restaurant, hotel licenses, special use permits, and alcohol permits that weren't originally budgeted for. Speaking to Sean, there was one single large item that contributed that. I do not know which entity it was. Going down for the general fund, interest and dividends, there was a higher return on investment than originally budgeted for $100,000. Next is the financial institution tax, which did end in 2013. However, there was some carryover from that year that wasn't received until March of 14. The original budget amount for that tax was zero because it did lapse after the biennium. But with that late payment, we're amending it for $155,000, which was received in the current year.
So it actually is financial institution tax, but it was really,
It was for 13, but you didn't get it till
Didn't
March
get
of
it,
14.
okay.
so.
And just the leg there. For the general fund for the fire, there's that sale of fire truck, which is offset above with the expenses incurred. Next is the future fund with investment revenue. There was also a higher return on investments than originally budgeted for $250,000, and that's just with market performance. Line down, grants fund, the grant revenue. As I discussed previously, that is just to offset the budget amendment for the grant expenditures in the grant fund. So it is the same amount for the 403,757. The next five are all for the general fund. The first one being property tax, $44,000. The revenue was greater than originally budgeted. Building permits were $30,000 higher than originally budgeted. Court fines, $90,000 for an increase in that due to fines paid. And then lot sales, there was a lot sold during the 2014 year for $171,522, and that was not budgeted for, so we've included that. And then lastly, there was miscellaneous revenue, which is reimbursements for miscellaneous incurred expenses. There are no large single dollar items in there. There were just different expenses that were reimbursed to the city and that get thrown into this miscellaneous revenue account, but that amount was for $62,000. And then lastly is the proposed encumbrances for the 2015 budget. These were provided by the different department heads, so I'll just start at the top. Fire department has asked for $40,000 for the central station remodel and the engine room floor. The museum has asked for $27,000 for buildings and structures, roofing for the church and the depot. And they have also asked for $18,500 for an interpretive plan, the details of which I don't know. For water and wastewater for buildings, first they've requested $50,000 to replace brass with no lead brass, $125,000 to replace registers and to purchase a new mobile data collector. And then the last four encumbrances are for refuse, the first being $450,000 for the landfill expansion and to build a storage building. Next is $60,000 to reline a manhole for the leachate system. $85,000 is requested for a roll-off truck. And then finally, refuse has ordered 3 new side loader collection trucks, which are not yet here as far as we know, for $708,774. Totaling 1.5 million and change.
These were all included in the 2014 budget and not spent?
You know, I am not sure. I know that the side loader trucks were not. Payments are being made on those already. And these were, like I said, these were provided by the department heads, so I'd have to clarify with them to see if they were budgeted for 14.
To be an encumbrance, by definition, don't they have to be budgeted in the prior year, not spent? And so they weren't included in the 2015 budget. I mean, there's really only, if you're not going to buy it in the current budgeted year, you either encumber it or you put it into the New Year's budget.
Mhm. That's correct, Mr. President, and that's my understanding on these items, that they are budgeted in 2014, but were not expended. And that's their.
And not re-budgeted in 2015.
Correct.
Yeah, the bulk of these are in the enterprise funds.
Yeah, the bulk of them are in the enterprise fund, yes. The general fund only has right around 85,000, it appears. The rest are for water, wastewater, and then refuse. So yes, most of them are in the proprietary funds.
You mentioned right at the end of your formal remarks that, and I think it was the side loader collection trucks, they are here?
No, they're not here. We were trying to keep track of those in order to determine when they should be capitalized for the financial statements.
Okay.
And we heard last week they weren't here yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did I hear you say, though, we've made a
But you're
down
making,
payment on-
you're making lease payments on them, but have not actually received the physical trucks yet. So that was kind of an area that we needed clarification from.
Who are we making the lease payments to?
You know, I'm not sure, Cheryl. I'd have to ask Cheryl and follow up on that. I'm not sure of the company name.
To me, that seems, I could understand if we made a deposit on a truck that was being built, but typically, when we lease something, we lease it through one of the financial institutions. We don't lease it until we've taken possession of it.
Right.
And that was one of our questions too, because that's
Yeah.
something that we were wondering.
Why are you making lease payments when you don't have the
Right.
item yet? Yeah,
So why are we?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, well,
And what are we using these for?
These are
Yeah.
side loader collection trucks,
Trucks,
so
I mean-
they must be the ones that
Right.
pick up.
yeah. So, I mean, like I said, that's my question. We need to look in a little further with Cheryl and Denise to see why their payments are being made if you don't have them yet. I don't know if the payments are being made as in lieu of deposits and you paid 3 months and that was the deposit, and then when you get the trucks, the lease reinitiates. You know, that's something we'll have to look into a little.
Are they here currently? I mean,
Denise or Cheryl?
yeah,
Yeah, I can.
maybe we could just take a short recess and you could visit with them. I hate to vote on this without knowing the answer to the question,
I
just
understand.
because it's such a large sum.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay.
Are there any other comments on on any of these amendments? or
I guess
encumbrances?
in general, with us running without a finance director for for a while. Were you surprised at anything, or has the ship still stayed afloat during this?
I guess coming in, that was kind of our concern, I guess, like what are we gonna be walking into and stuff like that. But as far as we can tell, and I looked at the, I was wondering, are the bank reconciliations getting done, or is the payroll getting done, stuff like that? And it seems like the day-to-day stuff, yeah, the bank recs were done, when we came here in November, they were done through October, so they're being done timely. Seems like the day-to-day activities getting done. It's just more or less some of the projects that they need assistance with, things that aren't pressing at the time, type of
Mhm.
thing. So that's kind of what we've been helping them with.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it's the
Bill-
ship is.
Yeah, bills are getting paid, people are getting
Mhm.
paid, so yeah. no.
Yeah. Okay.
Day-to-day is being, yep.
Well, why don't we take a short break and you can go visit with Denise and Cheryl and see if you can answer the
Okay.
side loader collection for
Perfect.
lease issue, and
Okay.
we'll just wait. for you.
Sure.
Mr. Coley, do you have an amount on the future fund transfer, item 4?
I do,
So to clarify things, I believe it's for you have a loan through U.S. Bank for
Right.
these, and you're making loan payments because you have the proceeds of the loan, so it's not a lease payment.
We already borrowed the money.
Right.
Yep.
You just don't have the
Okay.
trucks.
Just don't have the trucks yet, so you're starting to make a loan payment.
Yep.
Okay, well, that makes sense.
Makes more sense, yes.
All right, thank you.
Well, while you're here, we were talking to them about surprises or anything that they ran into when they came in, and to your credit, very much, thank you for everything that you did to keep everything going and make their job easier, make our job easier, and to keep the city going like you did. You've done a great job.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, well then, do we have any other comments or questions regarding the budget amendments? So, Mr. Colling, would the motion be simply to approve the proposed budget amendments and encumbrances?
yes, Mr. President, approve of budget amendments and encumbrances as presented.
As presented. Is there, one
I
of you?
would make that motion.
I'd second.
Okay, we have the motion and the second. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Decker?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. So the motion carries. That brings us to item 4, and that is the annual future fund transfer. And Mr. Colling, you have an amount?
I do, Mr. President. Pursuant to past practice, the city has traditionally made a transfer to the future fund of half of the oil royalty revenues received in the year, as well as the proceeds of lot sales, with the first $50,000 of lot sales going to the general fund and the remainder transferred to the future fund. This year, 2014, the city received a total of $141,089 in oil royalties, and the city sold lots in the amount of $171,471. Applying that formula, it would amount to a future fund transfer of $191,470.
So just so the three of us are clear, this is a transfer really from the general fund to the future fund.
Right.
Okay. So the motion then that they're requesting would be the transfer from the general fund to the future fund of the $191,470.
I would make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have the motion and the second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Decker?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. So the motion carries. The other item we have then to do is to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have the motion and the second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. We're adjourned.